And I'm Wilson on my show. Today, it's all about the Los Angeles wildfire. People are asking this question. Is it a dent of the legacy of President Joe Biden? Many persons have been talking about the fire, pointing accusing fingers here and there, but the governor of Los Angeles, the mayor of the county, you just name it, to the extent that the president also was spoken of. Well, we'll take a look at all this in course of the discussion segment. Before that, let's take a look at some stories making rounds globally. Let's move straight down to what is happening in South Korea. You know about the impeachment of former President Moon, so to speak. It all started when he chose to bring forth the martial law, saying that it's to help the people. But the people rose up and said, no, you become dictatorial for that reason. We do not want you. After the massive protest, opposition joined in the protest, and they're all saying enough is enough. You have to leave that place as the president. Then when they met at the house, immediately he was suspended. Because in the same climb, if allegation is leveled against, especially in top government functionaries, they'll tell you to just chill a little bit for them to investigate the matter. And in the course of the investigation, the ex-president, when I say the suspended president, said he's going to fight to the finish. For according to him, he has done nothing wrong. He's just doing it for the benefit of Koreans. But they're not saying it the way he is saying it. It's a case of, I'm trying to do something for you. The other thing is like, we don't want you to do it for us. After all, they say the leaders ought to be servants of the people. Right now, it stands there saying that he's not a good leader, neither is he a good servant. For that reason, they don't want him to be there anymore. So finally, the impeachment trial against suspended President Moon, it's about to start. It's about to go down, where everyone will speak their part. Everyone will talk their part. Everyone, just everyone, will just make sure that each part, talked about it before get to really realize that sometimes it's good for you to listen to the people, especially when we want to talk about governing the people. Now, let's see how the case will suffice. It's just starting today. He will have his own say. Then a decision will be made. Moving away from South Korea, let's dive down straight to Spain, where the economy is like saying something. Now, Spain plans 100% tax for homes bought by non-EU residents. Yes, this is where the economy has landed, Spain. When government is trying to source funds, instead of putting the burden on the people, others in same country be like the aborigines, so to speak, the indigents, the original citizens shouldn't be burdened with tax. So the foreigners in quote, the migrants in quote, that are doing so well in Spain should bear some part of the tax. As it stands right now, any home purchased by someone not of Spain origin, they've been told to start covering out 100% tax. That is like a proposal. It's like a plan. Discover that you are not Spanish, you are an immigrant. You've been there for years, and you are doing well. You're able to purchase beautiful mansions, beautiful houses across Spain. They're talking about 100% tax for homes purchased for these non-EU residents. Now that is like part of the shadow economy we're talking about, what Nigeria really wants to get involved in, taxing those places who feel that they've been enjoying tax freedom for a long, long time. But don't you think is segregation, or don't you think is a kind of a ploy to treat others that are non-European residents, but they are contributing one way or the other to the GDP of EU nations, of EU states? I mean, selecting these people and saying this group of persons must pay 100% tax. Think about it. Think about it. What do you feel about this particular notion? Let's just see what the reaction would be like, because something of this nature happened in Ghana when Nigerians were targeted. Of course, they cried out. And I believe that that will be raised up. Do you feel that non-EU resident will now start making plans to make sure that they become residents of the EU? Even after that, do you think they're going to shift ground on this particular plan, on this particular proposal? Only time definitely will tell. Let's move straight down to what is happening in Gaza. Yes, Israel-Hamas war. Ever since Hamas attacked Israel in October, it was last year, during about 2 years ago, we've seen constant bombardment, constant shelling of Hamas by the Israeli Defense Force. Palestinian officials say Gaza ceasefire deal has been finalized. That this time they want peace, okay? They really want to make one or two things clear to both parties. Yes, an attack was made. There was an attack on the state of Israel. Israel retaliated. They retaliated to the extent that nobody, envisaged the kind of retaliation they saw from the Israeli end. As it was like, a bashing, a trashing, I want to put it out, just using a swat or a hammer to kill a fly. That is a description made by so many persons. Yes, hostages caught, hostages killed, hostages are planned to be exchanged, and they are saying that there must be ceasefire for there to be peace, for them to resolve all this. Remember, Israel said no to Hamas after this war, so to speak. They didn't even want Hamas in power in Palestine. But right now, the finalized deal. Some are saying this peace deal, this ceasefire, is like, a piece of the graveyard. They are like saying that somehow, somewhere, things might just crop up again to take off Israel, and they may just say, hey, enough is enough. Or one, how would I put it now, one seriously radicalized Hamas member might just get up again and do something dastardly that might trigger the anger of Israel, and bam, the war will start again. The bombardment will start again. But nobody prays for that, okay? We want there to be ceasefire, for us to really count the losses, gotten by both sides, so to speak. Israel, yes, increased some losses. Hamas also was hit. Even the war spread to Lebanon. You just name it. Enough of this killing. Enough of this killing. Peace, they say, should be the watchword. Well, right now, we'll go for a break. When we return, Honorable Ehi Irariva, all the way from New Jersey, USA, will join us visually to really talk about this particular issue. And of course, I'll not be doing it alone. I have Joshua. He'll be here with me to really, ask some questions bordering about this Los Angeles wildfire. Is it truly a dent to the legacy of presidency of Joe Biden? That is what we want to find out. But it's going to be done after this break. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. We're taking a look at what is going on. Yes, in Los Angeles, where we have this raging wildfire. Properties destroyed, 16 or thereabout life lost. Millions, well, I say billions right now. It's like, lost to the infant. Many persons have been asking so many questions about this. I'm not here to do this alone. I have my co-anchor, Joshua, here with me in the studio. Josh, how you doing this afternoon?
Very well, and you?
I'm cool, thank you. All right, it's all about the Los Angeles fire. People have been talking about it. Even the Montala, Jaladeka, and they ran all the way from Los Angeles back to Lagos, Nigeria, saying, look, man, what she saw with her eyes were quite devastating. Her heart goes out to people that are affected and all that. People are like connecting it to the inability of Mr. President Joe Biden to do the needful. Some are blaming the governor. Some are just pointing, accusing fingers at one person or the other in connection with the dam, with the firefighters. You just name it. What can you make out of this?
Of course, it is an unfortunate situation, and my heart goes out to families whose victims, have lost their life in such a dastard situation. And of course, properties worth millions of dollars have all gone in fumes. But then, it's a fire situation that took place on January 7th, on Tuesday, in a city called Palisade, very close to Los Angeles. But of course, it is an unfortunate situation because we're looking at the economic situation in that particular city. About 14,100 acres of land have gone in desolate waste as a result of the fire. And quite interesting, as we have it now, the situation has been contained to about 95%. But the question people tend to be asking is, in such a place, it's a highbrow area, looking at the kind of influential personalities that reside in that particular location. How could it be that you built such very tasteful locations with structures of that nature, yet there was no safety standards?
We'll come to that. We're going to pose a question towards Honorable Ehi Igariba, joining us via Zoom on New Jersey. Honorable, good afternoon. It's a pleasure having you join us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Well safe. How are you too?
All right. So you're in the U.S. and you have a first-class information about what's really happening. But taking a look at the fire, did anyone see it coming? Was there any warning as to the outbreak of the fire? Was there any information, any prophecy of some sort? Let's start off from there.
Well, the devastation that has happened, the way that homes were decimated, businesses, and it's unprecedented. As a matter of fact, this is the largest fire outbreak in the history of the United States. At the last count, the losses so far, which of course is adding up, has been put to a minimum of $250 billion. Did anyone see it coming? I would say yes, for the most part, in the sense that California is known to have seasonal wildfires like this. And to underscore the level of anticipation that people have, for fires like this to happen, experts have, on the one hand, said that this is as a result of global warming. Therefore, many insurance companies have stopped, they've canceled insurance for homeowners in these affected areas, which obviously should have made the government to look properly at what is going on. Because if insurance are saying we can no longer, we are canceling insurance for anything that has to do with wildfire coverage for your homes, which means they have also done their research and they know the weather conditions in California. It gets really hot in California. You could feel, for the most part, like you're in the desert. And at that point, it seems the weather is just set up for anything, just about anything to ignite fire in that area, especially when investigation also have said that over 95% of fires that have occurred in California have been caused by individuals, maybe just as little as lighting a cigarette store, and when without extinguishing it, just throwing it to a dry patch of land, maybe in the park or somewhere, maybe in the woods, maybe behind someone's home, and then the fire just breaks out. The winds are always high, and the whole place is dry. A natural environment that is prone to fire outbreak has been created as a result of environmental conditions and high winds.
Yes, I do. Mr. He, I listened to your analysis, and it's quite apt, especially looking at it from both, the personal level and, of course, corporate governance, especially with regards to insurance policy. I understand that investigations have been carried out in Palisade, exactly that location where we're talking about, as regards, previous, occurrence, looking at the history of, California having such experience when it comes to wildfire. No insurance company would want to always take its head, especially looking at the cost involved. It also applies here in Nigeria too. But of course, what is your view as regards the residents living in such locations? You build such an expensive mansion, as the case may be, and then you forget that safety standards needs to be put in place. It wouldn't cost anything if, for instance, in a 50 location, let's just say 50 kilometers away from the entrance of the city, having, or within the city itself, having a fire service installed such that when it happens, you don't have to look for external help before you are able to contain the issue. Do you think that that would have made a lot of sense, or in fact made the situation even much manageable before it gets to that level where a city of about 14,100 acres were all in desolate waste? Are you there, Mr. Ihe?
I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
I
hear
can
you
hear
loud
you
and
now. Go ahead.
Okay. In the Pacific Palisades, for instance, the median cost of houses in that area as at last December, just a month ago, is about $4.7 million. That is on the average cost of houses in that area. So obviously, it's an opulent area where the residents are very rich and they're expectedly informed because they will have various professionals who tend to look at these issues on their behalf. However, it will appear they were stuck in the sense that these are homes that were not newly built. Some of the residents have lived there for upwards of 20 years. And so they've always paid their insurance against natural disasters like this. But this is tricky in the sense that this happened again in New Orleans at the time. Okay, why did I say it's tricky to get insurance compensation at times like because if the fire was ignited by an individual, then it will not be termed a natural disaster, and so they don't get paid. Then, with regards to having fire stations, I think the US is filled with, there are so many power. I hardly can drive for 5 minutes without sighting a fire station anywhere in the US. It is a rare occurrence, especially those areas. They do have fire stations. And of course, if you've been to the US, it's one of the wonders of the United States. Like they have fire hydrants within a few feet, maybe 10, let me say 100 feet of each other. It's difficult to go past 100 feet in the United States and not see a fire hydrant. A fire hydrant is a source that, the fire service can get water from to put out fire in homes. So if they arrive at a home and they are exhausting a fire in the vehicle, they just open the nearest fire hydrant, connect to it, and start taking water from there. So that way it's easy. But unfortunately, I would say the fire that broke out is, those fire hydrants were designed for situations maybe when one or two buildings are on fire. It wasn't designed such that when a whole city or a whole town or a whole settlement is on fire, the response just will be inadequate. So even the personnel will be inadequate. I don't think there's any city in the world that can at the moment cope with a fire outbreak that is engulfing an entire city. You just will not have the facility and the manpower to respond to such fire. Hello.
Since you said that California is like, a city that people and residents, they are aware that somehow, somewhere, there's just going to be fire outbreak. They're always ready. But some of the people that the water hydrant or the fire hydrant, whatever hydrant they are talking about was not functional when it was needed the most. Some of the opinion that there was one or two maintenance at the dams of that nature. Immediately after that, that was how the fire just started unabated. Do you feel there's a foul play somewhere, even if investigation is still ongoing?
The response was adequate. Because, for instance, at the last count, you have about 1,300 firefighting vehicles. You have about 14,000 firefighters. I'm sure in some countries they don't have up to 14,000 firefighters in the entire country. Neither do they have up to 1,300 fire vehicles. If you look at most states in our country, Nigeria, perhaps they don't have up to 50 firefighting vehicles in the entire state. But we are talking of a state having 1,300 firefighting trucks. The hydrants, what happened is the pressure drops from the fire hydrants. The pressure dropped because so many people taking water at the same time is going to cause the pressure to drop, because those hydrants, like I said before, were not designed to put out fire in an entire city at the same time. They were designed to manage fire outbreaks in one or two homes at a time. So they were overstretched, the pressure dropped, and so water stopped coming out because too many people trying to take, too many fire trucks connected to those hydrants at the same time would naturally cause the pressure to drop, and so water stopped coming out because everyone is sucking at the same time. So that's caused that. But several countries, including Canada and Mexico, sent firefighting helicopters and equipment down, sent their people to try to curtail it because they had to start trying to put out the fire from the top using the firefighting helicopters. But unfortunately, it's a whole city. It's just difficult for any country or any state at the moment to have the equipment and the resources to put out or contain such fire, promptly. Thank you.
All right, well, if you just joined us, this is International Forum. We will go for a break. When we return, this discussion definitely will continue. Don't go away. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, and we're taking a look at California. Yes, Los Angeles wildfire. They're listening to Honorable Ehi Igariba all the way from the U.S., New Jersey precisely. Joining us almost immediately right now is Honorable Agarase Dubob Logical Analyst, Political Affairs Commentator. Honorable, it's a pleasure to have you join us this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
All right, so before I go back to Honorable Ehi Igariba, what do you have to say about this wildfire?
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm joining late, but let me say this very clearly. That kind of fire can only be attributable to a community, from what I have read and heard, that the community that is godless, because it was one way that God is expressing anger to a people. In most of the things that they in 2019, before COVID, I visited that city, and to my mind, it's to me like a godless city. And once you take God out of the situation, from what I read or heard, that they had an event, and in all the things they were saying or doing, did not acknowledge the presence of God. And maybe one way for God to show that, oh, I'm supreme and I'm superior, is send down the fire. But for me, America is such a sophisticated country that no matter the level of inferno, they have capacity, like my brother has just said. But again, when the hand of God is involved, all those things they try to do will be brought to naught. So for me, trying to do what was humanly possible, but again, they did not also understand that when the fire was sent down divinely, it would have been impossible for any human effort to put up.
Well, Mike, I will definitely fall back to you, but let me bounce back to Mr. Ehi. Yes, because he makes quite some very salient point as regards why the response team was quite slow, given the fact that the fire hydrants were not designed for a mass, community. It was just for maybe one or two homes should there be an emergency situation. That is given. But my question to you is this: is there a conspiracy theory, given the fact that you may have been aware that one of Hollywood's finest, I'm talking about a business mogul, and of course an entertainment, an entertainment master in the game, I'm talking about Sean Combs, popularly known as PDD, has his home situated in that particular location. Sources say that it might have been orchestrated to happen that way to stall investigations going on right in his home. Because as you're aware, He's in a correctional center as we speak. So what is your take on the matter?
Los Angeles area, everyone knows, is a home for mainly celebrities. And if we are to narrow it to Prophet Combs, actually he has several homes. His main home is actually in Florida, in Miami, and he's got another home in New York where he's originally from. Then he just have his Los Angeles home. But again, it's not the only celebrity that has been affected. You have people like Mel Gibson, you have Paris Hilton, most of their homes have been gutted. In all of those areas, when you're talking of like Malibu, Pasadena, the new Palisades, these are very expensive homes, and I'm talking of thousands of homes. So I don't think one individual would have been targeted to the extent that, yes, of course, people are pointing at the possibility of arson. Or in my opinion, if there was arson at all, actually, it would have been an accidental one, because the environment in that area is already supercharged. It's just like, how do I put it? Is, on a very hot day, in Nigeria, for instance, and there is gusty wind at very high speed, up to maybe 80 miles per hour. At that point, if anyone will lit anything, it can travel far into any house, into dry leaves, because of the weather we are in now. So the vegetations are not green right now; they are dry, because it's winter. So if any of it's winter in some parts, and most of those areas have lost their greenery till the rain start coming again. So if any of those areas will get lit, the winds will just move it from one property to the other. And that's the devastation that I think has happened. But again, I was also talking to a friend just yesterday. The United States have also on their own, maybe in the California area, where I would like to apportion a bit of blame to the government. I think by now, with the incessant fire outbreaks that are happening in California, there are always several in a year, and most of them to devastating proportions. I thought by now I had to go research. I thought there was a national policy in the United States that compelled most American homes to be built by woods, only to find out that they just felt it was a cheaper material. It made their houses look finer. If you've been faced by fire, like if you look at the Nigeria situation, even most homes, when they are gutted by fire, maybe just the roofs will be burned, but the structure of the building remains. But because America built their homes using wood, so when there is an inferno like this, it just tends to level everything. There, some will argue, and rightly so, some areas, due to hurricanes and all of that, to reduce the number of deaths. Yes, that can be talked about in areas like Texas and all other areas. But California is not prone to hurricane, but fires. So you imagine that they will begin to consider using like concrete bricks to build their homes instead of continuing with woods that can just level the whole place. You barely can anything be salvaged, when fires like that occur. So I think I'm going to blame it more on the government not rejigging the building materials that are being used for almost all the homes in California, knowing that they are prone to, seasonal and often incessant fire outbreaks. Yes, so that on the part of the government, yes, they should, as a matter of urgency, revisit the materials that are being used for their housing, especially in California.
Before we dive more into the government's own part in whole of this, people like saying that President Joe Biden also should be called into this. The governor of that particular state should be called into this. But Honorable Agarise Dubo talked about divine, punishment, so to speak. Honorable Hill, what do you have to say about this? After all, California, Los Angeles is known as a godless city.
I didn't quite hear you, Wills. Okay, who was the question for, please?
Can you? The question is meant for you, drawing the lead from what Honorable Agarise Dubo talked about, saying it's like the wrath of God coming down on the people of Los Angeles because of what they did in a particular show, not respecting divinity and all that.
Okay, it's not good, sir. But I think I will take a little bit of exception to that because, God Almighty has already said he will not destroy the world with fire anymore. Or was it with flood? But God, I don't think God is actually destroying anybody or causing fire to burn homes, because amongst those people who have lost their homes are many Christians, and even pastors have lost their homes. But again, uh, America is having its challenge. There are tendencies here. California is a democratic state, and therefore they are kind of liberal in the government policies that they push for. While, of course, the Republicans are conservative and they tend to push for more Christian, supportive Christian doctrine. They support Christian doctrines and everything that would say resonates better with us as Nigerians and especially as Christians.
All right, all right.
Therefore,
I
that
will
is
come back
what
to
has also
you.
brought.
I'll come back to you,
Okay.
Honorable Ehi. Now let me go to Honorable Agarase Idubo. Like you heard, he said God said he's going to destroy the world anymore with fire, all right, or with water. But now let's take a look at the action of Mr. President and of course the governor, particularly in that particular state. Do you feel that they did the right thing? Because it's like they are under fire now for what really transpired because of this wildfire. Honorable I gotta say, Juba, over to you.
Yeah, very honestly, my very dear brother, he has copiously said virtually everything, because the attendant situation that they have on their hands now, I wouldn't say it overwhelmed them, but even the governor of that state also understands that. I keep saying this, yes, God has said he will not destroy the world, but very honestly, if you do things that are not consistent with normal norms, he sends a situation to put you in check. So I want to still believe that even if the whole world tried to salvage that situation, you still will have something that will overwhelm all the forces that are put together. But like my brother did say, I join in believing that the way they build their structures should change, because if a city is prone to fire all the time, most of the houses in America or even in the UK, they're all built with wood. They think it's more fanciful, more beautiful, but they also don't understand that should there be a fire outbreak, it will just finish everywhere. So they should start to think about how best to build their houses. I was in California for a Rotary International Convention sometime. My friend that I stayed with were cooking, but because we're in a hurry to go for the convention, we forgot to off the gas, and the whole place was just overtaken with smoke. But because of the kind of house, it was wood, so the fire service people came, just took off some part of the house, and they entered the house and they put up the fire. That again is an advantage, because they could come in without you knowing it. But if it's protected with all wood and all bricks and all that, the house will have been gutted by fire. But I think whatever has an advantage most times will have a disadvantage. So I want to think that I agree with my brother. Let the policy change to the extent that they can now use materials that can, so to speak, withstand future fire outbreaks.
Response now tends to be perhaps, checkmating your statement earlier when you said it was God bringing his wrath upon them. Because what Mr. Ehi said was just something that he took out of my mouth, because I wanted to throw that question at you, that do you also consider the fact that building materials, especially when it is used in houses that are not in any way with any sort of safety standards? For instance, you build a house with fire-resistant materials. You understand that when there is an emergency, the situation is easily curtailed. But when you build materials with combustible materials, like wood, for instance, and you now come back to blame God, is it that, as people say, God will come down to do what you're supposed to do for yourself? That was supposed to be my question to you.
Who, to me? Who is it, to me or who?
Yes, so you, Honorable, yes.
No, we're not blaming God. We are saying that when you have a situation where you don't acknowledge the supremacy of the Almighty, and you do things as if it doesn't really matter, if you have a godless situation,
where is God? My question is, you're not getting it. Where is God in a situation where you're building a house with non-fire resistant material? So where is God in this case?
It's fire we're talking about now, not the building materials. It's the fire that got to the place. The building materials are secondary because when the fire came, if they had fire resistant, materials, I'm sure they wouldn't have had that kind of disaster. So where God comes in here is recompensing for himself. If people have not acknowledged him, he could also have sent fire to a situation whereby you have brick buildings and all that. So it's not a question of whether God should have told you to use brick or use wood. But now that even if they had used brick or concrete or whatever, if God was going to do what he needed to do, those bricks would collapse. So very honestly, I just believe that people must in every situation acknowledge his supremacy, no matter how wealthy or how strong you think you are. Every day you must acknowledge so that he doesn't get angry and try to teach you some small lesson. So it's not a question of whether God is one that should have told them to use brick or use wood. But if even if they had used bricks and God was going to express his wrath, it will still be disastrous.
Okay, now let me go straight down to where Honorable Igariba is standing by, all the way from New Jersey. Some are beginning to turn this issue into politics, are beginning to drag in the person of Mr. President Joe Biden into the matter, as they are also blaming the governor of the city. What do you have to say about this? Is it going to affect his legacy or his own work these past few years?
Of course, this inferno is a disaster for the Biden administration for two reasons. Like I said before, California as a state, if it is the richest subnational in the whole world, in the sense that also it's the fifth largest economy in the world. If it were to be a country, California as a state is richer than India, than France, than the United Kingdom, if they were to be a standalone country. And therefore also being contributing 15% of the United States to the United States economy, which means there should have been special preparation. There should have been a national policy from the government targeted at curtailing these annual incessant inferno outbreaks. So I don't think there was any contingency planned from the federal government, especially when the vice president, is a former senator from California. She's a California indigene, if you will, and she used to be attorney general in California before becoming a senator. So she is from that state, and one would have thought that even while at the Senate, she probably would have influenced certain government policies targeted at protecting a state where 15% of the revenue or income or economy of the United States is resident, which is quite massive. And you look at certain features, because as part of that economy, tourism is a major contributing factor to to the California economic outlay. So the federal government should have taken more than a passing interest. Of course, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has come out very strongly to oppose Republicans who are, throwing, darts at him at this time. I think at this time people should join hands and not criticize. Lives have been lost, over 23 lives at the last count. Over 20 are missing. So I don't think it's time for blame game. Excuse me, but of course, politicians are always going to play politics and try to use every situation to weaken the other party. So California has been a stronghold for the Democrats, and so the Republicans are seeing it as a time to go for the break, and try to weaken them and create an election topic towards the next election so that they can say, look, if you want to be better protected, from these season fire outbreaks, I think you should not look the way of the Republicans because it's obvious, on quotes that the Democrats are unable to protect you because the loss is colossal. 250 billion worth of loss at the last count is huge. It's huge. That's some countries' annual budget that has been lost in this small cycle. And to imagine that Sunset Boulevard, our beloved Sunset Boulevard, that is like the heartbeats of Los Angeles, was also affected. Those wonderful buildings that thousands and thousands, millions, I would say, of tourists troop to Sunset Boulevard every year. There are over 1,500 buildings on Sunset Boulevard. Some of them have been gutted. And so it generally is a sad one for the country. And President Biden should take some accountability because these fires have been on a yearly basis. And the vice president to Kamala Harris should take some accountability because as a former senator and now vice president, I'm not sure there was any specific federal government intervention that was targeted at helping California at these times of need or any kind of policy at all that would have, helped to ameliorate the situation or even serve as a preventive policy to this occurring. For instance, again, look at the issues of the insurance. Many of the people have been left on their own because even the insurance companies are not going to be paying for most of this as they've been withdrawn and the government did not intervene. Thank you.
All right, my next question now goes to the Honorable there. If you listen carefully to what Mr. Ehi said, California is more like an economic hub. If it were to be allowed to stand on its own, it could stand or take the place of a country, considering the economic activity that go in and out of the state. We're talking about Hollywood and, of course, other activities that go on in the state. What do you think the Joe Biden administration could do right about now, considering the fact that he just has about a few weeks before his administration comes to an end, to be able to right the wrong? You just heard also that he needs to take responsibility to own up to the fact that there are certain policies that he should have put in place, considering the fact that California had a history of wildfires of this nature, though this one tends to be one of the highest in history. So what do you think the Joe Biden administration needs to do right about now to be able to correct that wrong, righting that wrong off, and making sure that his legacy is without any spot?
Honorable, here, I think you should react to that question. What should Joe Biden do right now to make right the wrongs? After all, some Americans are already complaining bitterly about his administration not doing so much for them to at least ameliorate the loss they've suffered.
If you look at it again from this point of view, the people are really in an unfortunate situation because what the Biden administration must do now is to think of a way to offer compensation to the people. But unfortunately, these are people that also, compensation is not what they really need because most of the people that are affected are wealthy enough to put up a building. But the challenge they're going to be having now is the governor of California and the structure they have there is also overwhelmed because, in the United States, if you have to build a property, you're not just going to start building, you have to get so many approvals before you start building. You have to get your what's it called? The first to get the building approved to be situated there in that particular portion. They need to look at your emergency escapes. They need to look at how you lay your electricity pipes and wires. They need to look at how your sewage drains are linked to the main one. They're going to have to give you approval for all of these things. And usually it will take perhaps a whole year before you can get those approvals. But with all of these buildings that have been bought, it could take almost 3 years before any of those celebrities, even though they have hundreds of millions of dollars locked in their account, before they can even get approval to rebuild their homes. So that's where the government needs to step in. They need to find a way to help facilitate the expedite actions on approving building plans for people to rebuild their homes. They need to bring in builders from other states because they are not going to have enough builders in California to rebuild these communities. Then the federal government, if necessary, maybe on a one-on-one basis, need to find out those who are in need, especially you also have pensioners who have lived in those areas in their younger days. They built equity in their homes, even though the home is worth maybe 20, 15 million now, but it
Thank
took them
you.
time to build all of those equities.
Thank
So
you. Thank you so much, Honorable Ehi. Our time is up. I know you have so much to say. So much to say. If time permits, but probably next week we'll retouch this, the discussion, and we have so much to say about the Biden administration, its legacy, because some are saying this is like putting a huge dent on what the man has done thus far. Even Gavin knows is under fire. He's under fire. Both of them are under fire because he's beginning to assume a political dimension. Honorable Agarse, do appreciate it for the fact that we lost contact with you due to connectivity. We might have had your own last line on this particular discussion. Well, Joshua, briefly, what advice do you have for the people out there because they're watching?
Yeah, mainly visiting that location and trying to engage with the people, assuring them of what could be done, even if he may not be able to, ameliorate the situation for everyone, but giving a human face to the situation by trying to engage with them, sympathize with them will go a long way to be able to at least right the wrong.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Honorable, we appreciate you. Honorable Garcia, do appreciate you. We'll do this again next week, Tuesday. God willing. Bye for now.